This morning we heard from Mark Newth, who works in the forensic lab in electronics. And they talked about retrieving data from the infotainment system and how all that works. I'm not going to go into all that background. He did say once a vehicle is shut off, the data there is marked for deletion, but it doesn't necessarily get deleted. And every system is a little bit different. On the Raptor, they were only able to get some GPS information. There were patches missing. He was asked to look at the evening of May 23rd through May 24th. He was unable to get continuous tracking. There were lots of portions missing. And wait until you hear just how much was missing and when those portions were missing. He said it was probably overwriting and there were bad sectors on the hard drive. He included GPS points on a map and said that that map contained all that they were able to retrieve. And the accuracy range is within 16 feet. At 4:52 p.m., May 24th, the vehicle was at Jefferson Crossing and it was parked. The next morning, May 24th, the vehicle was at 7:55 a.m. The vehicle was parked at a residence in Simsbury. This is Pavel's house. The testimony was that between 9:53 and 12:30, the Raptor went to another residence, and they're basically describing the job site. But there's a missing time frame here between 10 to 8 in the morning and 5 to 10 in the morning. There's this big gap. And let's match this to when Jennifer was seen. We know that she was still alive. Remember this testimony, because this ends up being really important. He says between 9:53 and 12:30, the Raptor is at this job site in New Canaan. Then it hops to 4:21 p.m. So the whole afternoon is missing. Raptor is on Route 84 and it's in motion at 4:32. The Raptor stops at a gas station in Farmington at 5:03 to 5:05. The Raptor is in motion on Eli Road. Between 5:38 and 6 p.m., it's back at Jefferson Crossing. So there's another gap here. Between 5:05 and 5:38, that's 30 minutes, there's no data. At 7:48 p.m., the Raptor is shown on Albany Avenue in Hartford. Now this would be when they were dumping the garbage. At 7:48 p.m. to 7:55 p.m., it shows the Raptor on Albany Avenue to Bishop's Corner, and it enters the Crown Market Plaza. And we already saw that on video. Between 8:08 and 8:10 p.m., it's driving along Deercliff Road. At 8:14 p.m., it's back at Jefferson Crossing. Now, hang on to that information for a minute because the cross-examination is real interesting. They looked at the 2017 Suburban. This is Jennifer's Suburban. They got, again, not all of the data, but they got some. And most of the data they got was around connected devices and not so much GPS. There's limited data on whose devices that they were. On May 24th at 14:56, so that's 2:56 in the afternoon, a phone connected to that Suburban. The defense asks, now he's talking about the Raptor, can the owner turn off the system that collects data, especially GPS data? And the witness, he wasn't sure. He's saying, not often. There are different options. And for the Raptor, I don't really know what those user options would be. The defense gets the witness to say again that the GPS data for the Raptor was pretty spotty. And the defense asks, were you able to determine why it was spotty? The witness said if it was an intentional thing, he would expect the entire day to be missing. And the defense counters with, well, unless you turn it off and then turn it back on again. And the witness said, I'm not sure. The defense was asking about accuracy, and they went on about how the vehicle drove on the lawn according to the map at Jefferson Crossing, and did that seem right? And the witness said, yeah, it probably happened. So they were back and forth about this accuracy, but I mean, we're talking feet. We're not talking miles. So I'm not sure why the defense is really going there. Now, I've learned through the trial that this guy has a reason for things that he does. So if he's going on about how many feet, I don't think he's trying to just waste his breath. But I don't know yet what the issue is going to be. It's the morning of the crime. At 5 to 8 in the morning, the Raptor is at Pavel's house. Then the next data point is not until 9:53. And so the defense sort of points out that there's missing data. Then this came out. On the report, it said that the Raptor was at this job site from 9:53 to 12:30. But the defense, through questioning, was able to bring out that there were only 3 points of data showing that location. So the defense asked, okay, what were the 3 points of data? Get this, 9:53, 12:21, and then 12:30. There are hours missing. This is why lawyers need to ask questions even if people think it's annoying. That is a significant gap. If this gap had come from the information relating to the defendant, do you think that the prosecution would have glossed over that? Or would they have pointed that out? The witness admits he can't actually say that the Raptor was at the job site the entire time. I want to note something else. Do you remember yesterday the defense was really cross-examining Pavel? You left that job site at 12:30 and then you never went back. And Pavel didn't really have an explanation of where he went for all that time. And the defense showed a picture of the job site and there was no car at all parked in the driveway. So we know Pavel didn't go back there. Where was he? So there's an awful lot that's missing that isn't really being nailed down or isn't being questioned about. The prosecution asked further questions. On May 24th at 7:55 a.m., the Raptor shifted into gear. So the Raptor is at Pavel's house. At 8 o'clock in the morning, it shifts into gear. At 9:55 a.m., the Raptor shifted into park, and that's at the job site in New Canaan. Where was it between 8 and 10? That's 2 hours. And there's no accounting for where the vehicle was between 10 and 12. Moved on to more questions about the Suburban. Comes out that he got no GPS data from Jennifer's Suburban for May 23rd or May 24th. The defense asked if a report on the Suburban was sent to Detective Kimball on May 30th, 2019. And the answer is yes. And the witness said he didn't have Jennifer's cell phone information. So it's not like he could compare Jennifer's phone or track Jennifer's phone. The defense introduced an email with an attachment of a report to Detective Kimball as a defense exhibit. So Kimball was sent the full report, like 1,000 pages. He was sent that full report almost immediately. Then he was also sent this smaller report. So they're going through this smaller report, the call logs. There was an outgoing call at 7:57 p.m. on May 23rd. There was an outgoing call at 7:54 a.m. May 24th. Now this is from the infotainment system information in Jennifer's Suburban. At 7:54 a.m., it shows that Jennifer made a phone call to a doctor. The witness can't say if it was made from the Suburban itself or if this was a matter of Jennifer or her phone getting into the vehicle after this and the infotainment system collecting this information from her phone. At 2:56 p.m., a device connected, paired with the Suburban. Well, the defense walked through this and through the ID numbers for the phones. The phone that had called the doctor, the phone that was Jennifer's phone that had made calls the night before, is the same phone that connected at 2:56 p.m. on May 24th. The prosecution theory is that Jennifer was gone by then. This doesn't mean that Jennifer was alive and talking on the phone. It means that Jennifer's phone was turned on and the Suburban was turned on and they were within 50 feet of each other. And it was brought out through both expert witnesses that in order for this pairing to happen, both the phone and the vehicle have to have power to them. The defense asks, did you explain any of this data information to Detective Kimball? Did you have a conversation about this? And the witness says, no, I don't recall doing that. The prosecution gets up and is now asking about the Raptor. And she asks, did that Raptor move from that address, basically, which is the job site Pavel said he was at New Canaan? But they can't actually say it didn't. The witness says, well, it doesn't appear that way. There's so much information missing that no one can say. The defense points out to the witness that the Raptor is located, according to the data, at Jefferson Crossing at different times that evening. But there was movement as if it was driving somewhere. But we all know there was lots of movement of that Raptor that was not picked up at all. Because the Raptor had gone from Jefferson Crossing to Deercliff to Mountain Springs and back to Deercliff, back to Jefferson Crossing, back to Mountain Springs, all this. And the system did not pick up any of that. So nobody can say if that big gap in time that Pavel says he was at the job site, no one knows if he was actually there, if he actually stayed there. And the whole flippin' afternoon is missing altogether. There is no data whatsoever that the Raptor ever went to 80 Mountain Springs. But we know it did because the neighbor's surveillance video showed it. Then the prosecution called Detective Mike Clark of Fairfield Police. He works in cyber investigations, and he was primarily concerned with the phones. He says the phone has to be on in order to record a data point. On May 26, 2019, the police got Fotis' phone. He had an iPhone XS. The phone was on when this detective received it, but it was in airplane mode. A second phone was also seized from Fotis. In 2019, they applied the technology that they had and created reports. In 2023, they went back with new technology to see if they could view any more information that they couldn't with the old technology. So I'm sure this is going to come up. The prosecution asked about May 24th between 5:35 a.m. and 12:22 p.m. The phone recorded a data point at 6:44 a.m. And the witness said he can't tell why it created the data point. He can't tell if the phone was actually in use, but he can tell it was at 4 Jefferson Crossing, 6:44 a.m. He testified that the phone moved between these times, so up until 12:22 a.m., but it was in the same area of 4 Jefferson Crossing. And the prosecution asked, was it the same location? He said, it's the same general area. There were text messages received in that time frame on that phone. And the testimony was that they can't tell if somebody actually read the text messages, but they can tell if they were opened as if you would be reading the messages, right? So none of the texts were read within that time frame. The first text was sent at 17 a.m., and this is an interesting one. It was somebody wanting Fotis to call them and saying that they have a client interested in Mountain Springs and they want to be able to show that property. At 7:37, there are messages. It goes on. They go on through these messages. At 9:02, though, there was a second message similar to the earlier one saying, hey, call me about, I've got a client interested in Mountain Springs. At 10:12 a.m., somebody sent Fotis a text saying, are you set for this weekend or are you still working things out with Jennifer? Which suggests to me maybe he was planning on asking Jennifer to have the kids or they were going to. It's never been clear to me whether they really had a scheduled visitation for the 25th or if that was just something Fotis told people. The jury had to sit through all these messages and then whether they were read or not read and all of this. And then they get to 13:33, which is 1:33 in the afternoon. And it shows that the texts were opened at that time. I mean, the implication is that Fotis didn't open his phone or nobody opened his phone and looked at these texts until 1:30 in the afternoon. And the suggestion is, or could be, that, well, maybe the phone wasn't in his possession. Okay, sure, you could argue that. If the police ever looked at my phone and when I viewed texts or didn't was important, I'd be in trouble. I mean, sometimes I don't look at my texts for days. There are texts on my phone that I've never opened. It doesn't mean I'm off doing something. Personally, I happen to believe Fotis was up to no good, but I think this testimony fell flat and it was tedious and they were reading texts that seem to be unnecessary to the case. And then he was showing a chart that he created showing, well, when a message was originally received and the time gap to when it was actually opened on the phone. I think, though, there is something in here for the defense, which is that somebody wanted to see that Mountain Springs house. And so there needed to be a rush on cleaning in that house. If Fotis is only getting this text, well, assuming he didn't even read it until lunchtime, there's going to be a big rush to go to Mountain Springs and clean. And they're not going to have time to be hiring somebody. This actually supports Michelle's statement to police. I guess they're going to have to go back and show his pattern. Was there ever any other time when he waited a few hours before looking at his texts? Oh, sorry. I was asleep. And the jury was probably asleep too. After lunch, they spent ages basically proving Fotis didn't read his messages all morning. If Michelle was an accomplice, why isn't she answering texts to make it look like he's home? They went through all these phone calls. 9:44 a.m., there was an unanswered call. It goes on and on. The text messages not read, calls not answered. And they're saying, well, all day, all morning, he didn't answer his calls, except there was one. At 8:26 a.m., there was a call that was answered. So the call came in on Fotis's phone that's located at 4 Jefferson Crossing, and somebody answered that call. So who was it? And was the phone in the bedroom, in the kitchen, in the office? I don't know. But somebody answered that phone. We don't know why. But if it was Michelle and she's going to answer the phone, why doesn't she answer all of the calls? They talked about a WhatsApp message from Fotis's phone to Andreas, and he's in Greece, and how it was sent on the 23rd but delivered on the 24th. And they're not saying if all these little, when it was delivered and when it was sent. They're not saying if that is going to be important. I feel sorry for the jury here because there's just a lot of stuff and they're not going to know which little detail to focus on and hang on to and what they can go to sleep for. And I'm joking. I know the jury's not going to sleep. On the 23rd of May, Fotis had sent a message to Andreas saying, "Call me in the morning." As normal, Fotis said. And Andreas sent Fotis like a meme or a joke video where there's some old guy sitting there staring at the camera and some voice comes on and says, "You have two choices. Choice A, stay with your wife for the rest of your life. Or choice B," and the old guy says, B. And that's it. But now it's come into evidence. They talked about device events at 6:44 a.m. The display turned on. But then when they started talking about it, the display could turn on for any number of reasons. If the phone got a notification, the display could turn on. At 6:44 a.m., the device, this is Fotis's phone we're talking about, the device was unlocked. And we know that Fotis's phone had a password. So somebody unlocked the phone. At 6:45, the device connected to Wi-Fi, but it turns out that the phone will just do that on your own. It doesn't need anybody to do that. At 6:45 for 4 seconds, there was an orientation change, and that happened 2 times. And they just go through this. I know they didn't say this, but I was trying to read the chart in the background, and I noticed at 7:01, there was an orientation change that didn't even last 1 second. So, I don't know. At 7:01, the device was unlocked. At 8:07, the device was unlocked. At 8:26 a.m., there was an incoming call that was answered. And it appears that it was answered via speakerphone. So, we don't know yet what that was about. At 9:03, the phone was unlocked. At 10:35, it looked like somebody was on FaceTime on Fotis's phone. They looked at the movement on the phone, and between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m., the phone traveled about 63 steps. But that 63 steps is cumulative, so over the whole course of the whole hour. So maybe later they're going to come out with a theory and say this is what this means. So the prosecution broke up the information. We just heard about the information from the morning on May 24th, and now she's focusing on the afternoon. From 12:22 p.m. to 7:10 p.m., the GPS data produced 138 location points. Well, so far, there's not a surprise. The police created a video of location information in the afternoon. So they showed this sort of aerial view of Fort Jefferson and the surrounding area, and they put these little yellow pins. So every time the phone moved, they were tracking it with these little yellow pins so you could see the travel down the road. And it shows the back and forth between Mountain Spring and Jefferson Crossing as expected. The phone was at Jefferson Crossing at 12:23, at 2:26 it went to Mountain Spring, at 4:16 it was back at Jefferson Crossing, and then they went into the call logs for the afternoon. At 1:53 p.m., Fotis calls Michelle, and that call lasts 23 seconds. At 3:16 p.m., he called Michelle. That phone call lasted 1 minute. At 3:35 p.m., he called Michelle. At 4:49 p.m., Pavel called Fotis, but Fotis didn't answer. At 5:16 p.m., Fotis called Michelle, and that lasted 47 seconds. Then they showed the location from 7:10 p.m. on. This is Fotis's phone again. And they showed a similar video of the pins in their location. What I wondered is if we were going to see those pins go to 80 Mountain Springs and then go into Hartford to dump garbage. But that's not what it showed. It showed the pins going right into Hartford. It didn't stop at Mountain Springs. So that was interesting. I still want to know, when were the garbage bags loaded into the Raptor? Who loaded them and from what location? That question has still not been answered. It may never be answered. I don't know. During this time that they were throwing out the garbage, they were able to track Fotis's phone. and they showed that he made 3 stops. And we already saw on video that he threw out garbage. At 7:47 p.m., Fotis called Kent Mawhinney. At 8:27 p.m., Fotis called Lauren, the nanny. At 8:29 p.m., he phoned somebody else, and they didn't give a name. They just gave a phone number. That call lasted 10 minutes. Between Fotis and Pavel, there were 11 communication events. Pavel sent a text to Fotis and then another one immediately following that at 2:12 p.m., which was work-related. Fotis texted back with, "Okay, when are you coming to the office?" Pavel answers, "End of day." Then Pavel sends another text immediately and says 4:30. Fotis responds, "Okay, made progress today." That was at 2:24. Pavel doesn't respond until 3:02, and Pavel's answer was yes. At 4:49 p.m., Pavel called Fotis, but Fotis didn't answer. Well, this explains why Fotis and Michelle might have been surprised to see Pavel, because they're expecting him at the office at 4:30, not at 80 Mountain Springs. The police extracted the information on Fotis's second phone, and they looked specifically at May 29th. They found 344 location data points. There were pages and pages and pages of location points that were retrieved, and there was a box that said deleted. So the witness was asked, well, did the user delete these? And he said, I don't know, the system can just delete these things on its own. Then the prosecution wanted to introduce a map related to May 29th. And the defense objected and said, what he's about to show is incomplete. There are omissions. It shows where Fotis was at one point in time, doesn't show where he was coming from or going to. Anyway, they went back and forth about this. Ultimately, the judge allowed it in. What this map showed was that on May 29th, it showed that Fotis was on West Main in Avon, Connecticut. And that was one of the bits of data that was deleted, but the witness can't say if it was intentional. Then they go into at 8:08 a.m. on Fotis's second phone. There's an incoming call from Michelle that Fotis doesn't answer. And there are a few more from Michelle until finally Fotis phones Michelle. And again, those ones were deleted, but not necessarily manually. Apparently this can sometimes happen. The system just does this. So the defense got up to cross-examine, and he really focused on 2 things. One was the map, and one was the movement data on Fotis's phone. So the map that he was concerned about was the one that was just presented, showing Fotis on a particular road on May 29th. The defense pointed out the absence of information on latitude and longitude in a number of the entries on the report. The defense brings out the fact that calls going to voicemail would appear to be answered. And the defense was going through this report and asking about all the terms and all this. It was just boring as crap. And I don't know. I mean, maybe it's me. I couldn't figure out where he was going with it. It seems to me that the people who knew where all this is going to go were the state and the defense. At one point, the judge said, well, I'm not sure if this is just general education. So I don't know if the jury knows what this is really about. I'm sure it's going to come up. Anyway, in citing different things through this report and asking the witness questions, the defense did something. One of the items he used as an example was a 6-minute phone call between Fotis and Pavel. This was May 29th. Do you remember when Pavel was on the stand and he was asked, well, Why didn't you tell police where you were? Why did you say you were in New Canaan and not running around to junkyards and going to get Porsies? And Pavel had said, well, nobody asked me that. So Pavel plays that game. Pavel was also asked yesterday, when was the last time he talked to Fotis? Because it was coming out that Pavel just quit showing up for work. And it came out that he didn't tell Fotis he quit. He didn't get fired. He just didn't show up for work. And Pavel's answer was, the last time I saw Fotis in person was a week later, a week after Jennifer disappeared. Now we're talking about May 29th, and it has just come out that, Pavel and Fotis were talking on the phone on May 29th. So it makes me wonder what that was about. And I can't help but wonder if the defense didn't use that particular example on purpose, just to get that out there. The defense brings up the fact that there was data before 5:44 a.m. on Fotis's phone on May 24th, but that wasn't included. And they go into movement data, and it was just so long and drawn out. The short story is that there was lots of movement recorded by the phone prior to 5:44 a.m. And it's pointed out that at 12:03 a.m., for example, the report shows the phone going upstairs. At 4:13 a.m., the device moved 77 steps. I mean, in my brain, I'm thinking this is not actually a good thing for Fotis, but okay. Then the defense pointed out one that took place from 4:24 a.m. to 4:52 a.m. that the phone moved 15 steps. So the phone's in motion during this time, but it only moves 15 steps. So the defense asked, why does it take 30 minutes to move 15 steps? Well, the witness doesn't know. At 6:57 a.m., 63 steps were recorded in a matter of just a couple of seconds. They're talking about this health app. The health app would have to be actually turned on in order to capture steps. And the defense gets the witness to reiterate that GPS data would stop showing if the battery was low. And on redirect, the prosecution was trying to get out between 5:35 and 12:20. Did the phone move? And the witness couldn't recall because he no longer had the report in front of him. It was a long afternoon of that. That's all I've got for you today. Watson needs a WALK, and so do I think. Trust your gut. I'll see you in the comments.